Have you ever gotten into a debate with somebody over whether or not humans are designed to eat meat? I'm going to give you the most obvious and simplest argument. There is no counter argument. You don't need to be a nutritionist to understand this, and you don't need to cite more scientific papers than the next guy to prove your point. This argument gets to the base of the issue with simple logic and reasoning so that anyone with eyes and a brain will have to agree. If somehow, by the end of the video, you don't agree, you're going to have to let me know why in the comments. First, we'll look at gorillas. Gorillas are herbivores. They might eat some insects, and they might eat some carrion, which is dead flesh if they find it, but otherwise they're eating leaves, fruit, shoots, and twigs, and other plant matter. Gorillas are able to do this because they have developed a huge spiral organ called the cecum. The cecum houses trillions of bacteria to help them ferment the fiber they consume so much of into fatty acids. They need bacteria to do this because no vertebrate animal has the enzymes to break down cellulose into simple sugars. This is why fiber is indigestible. Cows take a similar approach, eating cellulose-rich grasses, except where the gorilla does most of its fermenting in the hindgut, the cow and other ruminant animals do most of their fermenting in the foregut with their rumens. Both gorillas and cows will actually eat some of the excess bacterial growth for a good source of protein. So even though these animals are putting almost nothing but fiber into their mouths, what enters the bloodstream to feed them is really a lot of fatty acids and amino acids. If we look at gorillas or cows, we should notice something a little unflattering about their physique. They have rather ginormous bellies. They need to in order to have the large digestive tracts needed to extract adequate nutrition out of the not so nutrient-dense foods they consume. If we look at some carnivorous animals, or any carnivorous animal really, like lions, hyenas, dolphins, and wolves, we notice the exact opposite. We see more slim bellies and streamlined builds. The obvious reason for this is that the food they are eating must require less digestion. Plain and simple, as they are clearly spending less energy and physiological resources on their digestive systems. Now, the crucially important concept to understand, and it's really quite easy to grasp, is that animals have finite resources and energy. That is to say, if more energy is being spent digesting food, less energy can be spent on other physiological processes. And this brings us to the other side of the pattern. Although gorillas are pretty smart animals, they actually have the smallest brain to body size ratio of any primate. They're social creatures, and there certainly is an association with how social a species is and how intelligent they are. It can be pretty hard to keep track of all the different relationships in the social group. But simply put, you don't have to be very intelligent to pick leaves off of a tree and put them in your mouth without biting your fingers off. So we see this pattern where all herbivorous plant-eating animals have smaller brain-to-body size ratios with brains that take up less of their total energy expenditure. Intelligence isn't something that you can just get for free. Brains take up a ton of energy, and animals aren't going to waste their energy on brain power they don't need. The ability to hunt, on the other hand, requires tremendous cognitive abilities, especially if you're going to hunt in a team with a coordinated effort like lions, hyenas, dolphins, and wolves. Even just the brain power for high acuity visual perception takes up a lot of brain region. This is why you only see predators with very big eyes and great visual acuity. Predators need a greater amount of brain power because, unlike picking leaves off of a tree, the flesh of other living animals is the hardest, most difficult food to get. Animal flesh is also the most nutritious and easy to digest food there is, and so animals will run away or fight you until their last breath. The simple truth is, the more nutritious something is, the more other organisms would love to eat it. So in order to survive as a highly nutritious organism, you have to be able to protect yourself. Just like how bigger banks with more money in them have more security compared to your piggy bank with some loose change. So the most nutrient-dense foods will be the most protected foods. Bone marrow, one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet, is literally protected inside a bone so thick only hyenas and humans can crack it. And that's only relevant if you're able to separate the animal from its pack, chase it down in a coordinated effort, pierce its thick hide, and kill it despite its every effort to stop you. And that's not even the end of it. This fresh corpse is now desired by every other meat-eating creature that would love a piece of its nutritious flesh. In the animal kingdom, meat is much more highly coveted than any vegetable. Nobody's doing that for a sweet potato. Animals don't fight over quinoa. They would if it was as nutritious as animal flesh, but it's not. Grass is the extreme example of a low nutrient organism. Grass grows so fast and abundantly, but also with such little nutrition that any animal who would bother to try and get any nutrients out of it would basically have to be a digestive system with legs. And even then, these animals could never keep up with the supply of grass before being eaten by other predators themselves. You're probably saying, but what about nutritious vegetables like kale and pumpkin seeds? Well, that's just it. Like I was saying, the more nutritious an organism is, the more protected its nutrients will be. Take seeds for example. On paper, seeds are typically very nutritious. They're so nutrient dense because seeds have to have everything a plant will need to start a new life. Seeds are like the babies of plants. A parent plant gives a lot of nutrition into its seeds, its babies. But the plants aren't going to do this just so some animal can come along and get a free, easy, nutrient-dense meal. Plants, being terrible at the whole running away thing, are master chemists. If they don't make physical structures like thorns or difficult to crack husks, they make all sorts of defense chemicals to deter predation. These defense chemicals typically make the nutrients difficult to digest or do straight up damage to the animal's digestive tract. For example, pumpkin seeds appear to be a good source of zinc on paper, but the phytic acid inside them impairs our ability to absorb zinc while doing damage to our digestive tract. Spinach appears to be a great source of iron and calcium, but the iron is non-heme iron, and the calcium comes with a ton of oxalate, which can seriously mess with your mineral metabolism and damage various tissues if it enters the body. Plant food is easy to obtain. It doesn't take much intelligence or skill, but it's not very nutritious and very difficult to digest. Animals will run away or fight you because they don't want to be eaten. They've worked very hard to assemble this nutrient-dense body of theirs, and aren't willing to give it up very easily. Plants also don't want to be eaten, but they can't run away or fight you. Plants take many different approaches to minimize the negative effects of predation. And many of these mean that they are less beneficial to eat than they may first appear after simple chemical analysis of their nutrient contents. If I told you that poison dart frogs are a great source of protein, you probably wouldn't be interested, would you? This is obviously an exaggeration, but the point I'm making is that plants aren't as nutritious as they might appear on paper, and that meat, fish, eggs, dairy are far more nutritious than plants. Plain and simple. So when you're an animal deciding what to eat, it really comes down to where do you want to spend your physiological resources? Do you want to eat and eat and eat all day, constantly digesting food, even chewing your cud in your sleep? Do you want to eat your first poop and run it through a second time to get more out of it, like a rabbit? If so, you'll have an easy time obtaining your food, but a hard time digesting. In this case, it's best to have a small brain and a big gut. Or would you rather spend an incredible amount of energy using a big brain so you can just barely hunt down the most difficult food to get, but once you do get it, it's so nutritious that you don't have to eat as often? In that case, best to have a big brain and a small gut. Okay, I'm sure for a while now you've realized where I stand on the whole "are humans meant to eat meat" question. The answer is an obvious yes, because in case you haven't realized, humans have one of, if not the largest brain to body size ratios on the planet. Right? This is the simple, obvious argument, because I don't need to argue this. I don't need to tell you that our brains take up more than 20% of our total energy, oxygen, and blood supply, despite only being 2% of our body mass. Everyone knows humans have big brains. And I also don't have to argue about what our teeth look like and how many inches long our colons are. I don't have to tell you that our digestive organs are quite small for our body size. Anyone with eyes can see that humans, at least healthy humans, are slim. And this simply makes sense. We can't have a ton of energy going towards digestion when we have so much energy going towards cognition. This means that in order to be the most intelligent creatures on the planet, we need to eat the most nutrient-dense, easy-to-digest foods there are. Simply put, if you want to have a big brain and a small gut, eat meat. If you want to have a big gut and a small brain, be a vegan. It even seems that the large brain to gut size ratio is intuitively known when it comes to alien depictions, as they are most often drawn as caricatures of the modern human extreme, with less energy diverted towards digestion and muscle to maximize brain power. Now, do I think humans should only eat meat? If it works for you, that's great. But there's a nuance to this whole hierarchy of food and nutrient availability. Humans manage to cheat the system. Some plant seeds like wheat and rice are full of energy-dense starch, long chains of glucose. Glucose gets a bad rap today, being sugar, but really it's an easy-to-burn fuel for most people who are metabolically healthy. I'll make another video of these nuances in the future, but for now, all we need to understand is that with some plant foods like wheat, rice, and potatoes, there is potential for energy-dense starch. With wheat and rice, the hull or husk is the outer indigestible layer that protects the grain. The bran is the slightly indigestible layer that somewhat protects the inner grain, but arguably also has some nutritional value. The germ has some nutritional value as well and is at the base of the grain. But the bulk of the grain is the endosperm, and this is all that remains with fully refined grains like white flour or white rice. Breeding and other agricultural techniques combined with refinement and processing of these grains allowed humans to game the system. Harvesting grain is pretty easy and wheat doesn't tend to fight back. And the refinement process is kind of like a clever way of pre-digesting the food mechanically outside of the body. Done at large scale, this is a very efficient way of getting energy. So efficient, it allowed us to start civilizations. For some who don't seem to be able to make carnivore or keto work, many people have success incorporating carbs that come with minimal plant toxins like starches, fruits, and sources of sugar. People immaturely bash processed foods as if the very fact that a food is processed means it's bad. But processing food is something that modern humans do, and it saves our bodies from having to spend energy on digestion, allowing us to spend more energy thinking. Most plant foods people traditionally ate required extensive and thorough processing to make them worth eating. Meat, on the other hand, can simply be eaten if you can catch it. The nuance to this nuance comes when we consider the potential downsides to fully refining grains to just the endosperm. This means that we're likely missing out on some of the fats, proteins, vitamins, and minerals in the germ and possibly the bran, especially fat-soluble vitamins. So while refined grains are a fantastic source of energy, they are not a fantastic source of other nutrients like meat is. And ample glucose without micronutrients to properly metabolize the glucose can lead to metabolic disorders. Meat, on the other hand, comes with energy-dense fat, a complete amino acid profile, B vitamins, fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, minerals, and is easy to digest even with very little processing. Fresh liver and muscle would even give predators glycogen and vitamin C. Another nuance to consider is vegetable seed oil. By my logic thus far, you might also consider vegetable seed oil a cheat code as they are energy-dense fats in a quick-to-consume processed liquid form. However, vegetable seed oils are so bad that they'll be a whole other video. For now, the weak polyunsaturated fats are easily damaged by heat during processing and cooking. Because the fats are rancid, chemical deodorizers are used to remove the terrible smell, and the high omega-6 and aldehyde contents are incredibly inflammatory. To summarize, plant foods are typically less nutritious and harder to digest than animal foods. Animals who eat plants have large, energy-demanding digestive systems and small, not-so-energy-demanding brains. Animals who eat other animals have smaller digestive systems and larger, more energy-demanding brains. Humans, being probably the best example of a small gut, large brain animal, are obviously designed to eat nutrient-dense, easy to digest foods, like meat, fat, dairy, eggs, and seafood. Humans managed to game the system by making some plants worth eating through agriculture and processing. Refined grains are a good example of energy-dense, easy to digest plant foods for our small guts and energy-demanding brains. Unlike animal foods, however, these refined grains don't come with a complete nutritional profile, so animal foods should still always be a staple in your diet if you want to have a small belly and a big brain. Lastly, the dangers of these ultra-processed foods is really just because of vegetable seed oils and certain crazy ingredients like food dyes and preservatives. I'm inspired to make these videos because there is a lot of misinformation when it comes to nutrition. And I myself know very well from firsthand experience how terrible it is to live with poor mental and physical health. But I also know that you can heal and recover when you give your body what it needs from nutrient-dense foods. Today, I see so many people suffering with poor health, and it stems from diet, and I have a lot of sympathy for this, because nothing that we're told makes any sense. For example, from a young age, we're told that vegetables are the healthiest foods, and that red meat is terrible for us. And I'm not saying that you should never eat your vegetables, but what I'm saying is that this simply isn't true. This came from when parents couldn't afford enough meat, and so they tried to encourage their kids to eat more vegetables. The good news is, though, that even if you've been lied to 1,000 times, you only need to hear the truth once to make everything all clear. And so my goal is to make these videos as simple and as logical as possible to expose how ridiculous the lies are. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.